Welcome back to the Bible Stories series. In the previous episode, we watched the prophet Jeremiah warn and weep exhaustingly until his voice was hoarse. But ultimately, no one listened to him. In 586 BC, the prophecy became reality. The iron hooves of Babylon trampled Jerusalem, and the temple was burned to ashes. The book we are going to read today, the Book of Lamentations, has a very special timing. It does not take place during the war, but on the morning after the war ended. Please close your eyes and imagine, the screaming has stopped, the slaughter has ended, and the army has retreated. The entire city is dead silent, and the air is filled with the smell of scorched wood and corpses. The once prosperous streets are now nothing but ruins. This book is a collection of 5 funeral dirges written by a survivor, traditionally believed to be Jeremiah, sitting on the smoking ruins. For someone who has never read the Bible, this book will shock you, because it does not attempt to romanticize suffering, it nakedly records the ugliest and cruelest side of war. It tells us, faith is not pretending to smile in the face of pain, but honestly shedding tears. As soon as the poet opens his mouth, he uses a heartbreaking metaphor. Looking at this once proud city, he writes, "How deserted lies the city, once so full of people. How like a widow is she, who once was great among the nations." Under the poet's pen, Jerusalem is no longer a pile of stones, she has become a woman. Previously, she was a noble princess wearing magnificent clothes, and kings of various nations came to pay her tribute. Now, she has been stripped of her clothes, her husband, the king, is dead, her children, the people, have been taken away, and she herself has been reduced to an enemy's slave. She sits crying by the roadside, tears streaming down her cheeks, yet no one comes to comfort her. Those lovers, allied nations, who previously formed alliances with her have now all betrayed her. This description is extremely delicate and cruel. It shows us that the fall of a nation is not just a political failure, but the complete loss of personal dignity. This book asks us to face a truth directly: in this world, all wealth and glory are fragile. When the protective umbrella is taken away, a princess becoming a slave often happens overnight. Faced with such a tragedy, ordinary people would ask, "Why is our luck so bad?" or "Why are the enemies so evil?" But the Book of Lamentations presents a much more devastating perspective. The poet knows very clearly, the mastermind behind all this is not the king of Babylon, but God himself. He writes in chapter 2, "The Lord is like an enemy, he has swallowed up Israel." Please pay attention to this phrase, "The Lord is like an enemy." For the Jewish people, this was a theological nuclear explosion. Isn't God our protector? Doesn't he love us? Why has he now become an enemy shooting at us with a bow and arrow? The poet describes, God tore down his own temple with his own hands, as casually as tearing down a garden fence. God no longer listens to prayers, but instead covers himself with a dark cloud. This gives us modern people a very profound thought. When we experience immense suffering, the most painful part is not the suffering itself, but the feeling of being abandoned. We feel as if God has become an enemy attacking us. The Book of Lamentations does not shy away from this feeling, it honestly records human anger and confusion toward God. This tells us, questioning God is not a sin, but the genuine outcry of a suffering soul. Next, the camera zooms in, and the poet takes us to look at close-ups of the post-war streets. These scenes are extremely bloody and even nauseating, but please do not turn away, because this is the true face of war. The poet writes, "Because children and infants faint in the streets of the city. They say to their mothers, 'Where is bread and wine?' as they faint like the wounded." There is something even more terrifying, because the siege lasted so long and starvation reached its extreme, compassionate women actually cooked their own children to eat. Can you imagine that hellish scene? Those noble women who used to be pampered and wouldn't even let their feet touch the ground when walking have now turned into beasts in order to survive. Seeing all this, the prophet Jeremiah said, my eyes fail from weeping, I am in torment within, my heart is poured out on the ground. This book is not just a poem, it is a severe indictment of the evils of war. It reminds us that when humanity abandons its conscience and abandons God, the bottom line of societal collapse can be bottomless. Seeing this, you might feel very desperate and almost unable to read on. But right in the very middle of the book, chapter 3, an unbelievable ray of light suddenly appears. This passage is one of the greatest plot twists in the entire Bible. In the midst of extreme agony, the poet suddenly stops. He seems to be speaking to his own soul, yet this I call to mind and therefore I have hope. What did he call to mind? It wasn't that the current situation had changed, the ruins were still there, nor had the enemies disappeared. What he remembered was God's attributes. He wrote the famous quote that has been sung throughout the ages, "Because of the Lord's great love we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning, great is your faithfulness." This is simply a logical faith. In the midst of a famine where people are eating human flesh, on the ruins of a fallen nation, he actually dared to say, God's compassions are new every morning? This is because he realized a truth: discipline is not destruction. If God really wanted to destroy them, they would have vanished long ago. Being alive now and still feeling pain means God still leaves room for them. Pain is God's last resort to awaken a sleeping soul. Although this ray of light is faint, it appears incredibly dazzling in the darkness. Here I want to add a very interesting detail, which is very important for understanding this book. In the original Hebrew, the Book of Lamentations is an acrostic poem. The Hebrew alphabet has 22 letters. Each chapter of this book is written in alphabetical order. The first sentence starts with A, the second sentence starts with B, all the way to Z. Why go through so much trouble? Shouldn't a person be incoherent when in extreme sorrow? This is actually a kind of emotional therapy. This means the poet put that chaotic, boundless pain into an orderly literary framework. It's like telling us, although the pain is immense, it has boundaries. It is confined between A and Z, it will not spread infinitely. Through this kind of writing, the survivors picked up the broken pieces one by one and pieced meaning back together. This teaches us, facing trauma, we need to speak it out, write it down, and organize it before we can slowly step out of the haze. The end of the story does not usher in a grand happy ending immediately like a Hollywood movie. Chapter 5 breaks the rules of the acrostic poem and turns into a chaotic prayer. The entire book ends on a massive question mark: why do you always forget us? Unless you have utterly rejected us and are angry with us beyond measure. The book just ends like that. No miracles, no immediate restoration of the nation. This leaves many people confused, but this is exactly where the Bible is realistic. Real recovery from trauma is often a long process. Sometimes we have faith, like chapter 3, and sometimes we fall into doubt again, like chapter 5. The Book of Lamentations leaves this, to be continued, ending to us. It is waiting for the return 70 years later, and even more so waiting for 600 years later, for Jesus Christ, who also cried out, "Why have you forsaken me?" on the cross, to personally answer this ultimate question about suffering.